Look, Lenny. Hello. Look, smile. Goodness. Trump Tower. You see that? How big Trump Tower? How tall it is? Yeah, that's so tall.
The water, chips, pretzels, and souvenir hats available. I cannot stress enough how important it is to stay hydrated on a day like today, so be sure to visit Zach's early and often. One final note, if anyone's going to have any loud conversations or talk on your cell or your telephone, please do so downstairs. Just be
Million selling chewing gum, and he built himself a pretty little office tower here in the banks of the Chicago River. This building is in the Spanish Revival style of architecture. If you've ever been to or seen pictures of Madrid or Barcelona, you might think that this building could fit in on those city streets. And it gets its unique white facade from the 250,000 glazed terracotta tiles that make up the sides of the building. Those terracotta tiles are stunning, and they are very difficult to clean. You cannot use a power washer on the Wrigley, of course being Wrigley Field, home to the greatest institution of Western civilization since the Roman Senate, the Chicago Cubs. I'm a lifelong Cubs fan. I went to my first Cubs game when I was a baby back in and I share that in common with my great-grandfather, who I was lucky enough to get to know. He didn't live long enough to see the Cubs win the World Series, but he never lost hope. He used to say, Dylan, anyone can have a bad century. He was an optimist. Right up in front of us, you will see a tall blue building with those letters on the side and the spire up at the very top. This is Trump Tower, home to the Trump International Hotel and Residences. Trump Tower is the second tallest building in the city of Chicago, standing at a height of 1,388 feet tall, or 423 meters tall, if you were into that sort of thing. It was completed in 2009 by Skidmore, Owings & Smith. Now, if you put up the second tallest building in your city, you are going to annoy your neighbors. They're not going to have the same view of the river that they used to, so what do? Adrian Smith, who designed this building, built it in the contextualist style, which celebrates and embraces the idea that buildings don't go up in a vacuum. They go up in cities, in neighborhoods, they have surroundings, and the building should be in conversation with those surroundings. In this case, those patios that you see going up the side of Trump Tower are at the same height of other buildings nearby. The lowest patio is at the same height of the roof of the Wrigley building from a moment ago. The medium patio is at the same height of the Jewelers building over on your left-hand side. Sort of looks like a cake topper up there at the top of the building. It's beautifully catching the sunset over there on your left-hand side. And the tallest patio is at the same height of the AMA Plaza building, which is this black box building coming into view over here on the right-hand side of the river. Give a little tip of the hat to the neighbors. Suddenly, they don't care. They can't see the river anymore. Now, the question I get asked on every single tour is, are our bridges functional? Yes, they are all functional. They go up at set 60s. They are two of the most iconic buildings here in Chicago. They're two of the most photographed buildings here in the city. And they also help tell the story of this part of Chicago back in the middle of the 20th century. Back in those days, the Chicago River was, and this is a hydrological term, the parking garages down here at the bottom of the building. They didn't want you to back your Buick out onto State Street. You also had access to things like grocery stores, retail stores, an ice skating rink, a movie theater, a bowling alley, restaurants down here at the street level, and then down at the river in Marina. Nowadays, if you lease an apartment inside of a luxury building, you would expect to find all sorts of amenities like that. But back in the 60s, when these two corn cobs went up, it makes you think of our sunsets. You'll also notice at the front of this building, the facade of the building is facing us here on the river, and not either of the streets the building is located on. It's because this building conforms to a 1909 plan for Chicago that was set out by a man whose name was Daniel Burnham. I'll tell you more about Burnham and the plan later on the tour. All you gotta know now is that he brown or purple line train anywhere in the loop. They'll take you for a little spin around the center of town, and then you'll cross over this bridge here. Everybody. This is where the main branch of the Chicago River that we've been on so far this evening meets up with the north branch, which is over on your right-hand side, and the south branch, which is down on your left. Now, if you look over on your left, you'll see a pink line train crossing over on Lake Street. If you're thinking like a historian, you may ask yourself the question, yourself down and get to a whole new part of the continent. People kept doing that and doing that and doing that, and eventually Chicago started to spread up. Now this part and it sold for $2.25 million. We are coming up to the north branch of the Chicago River. We're going to make a quick U-turn up here. I'm going to hop off the mic for just a moment. Now's an excellent time, which allows the bridge to keep its active status designation. That way you don't have to tear the bridge down, you save a couple bucks that way. The rail industry is incredibly important in Chicago's history. It's part of how we got as big as we did, as fast as we did back in the 1800s, and it continues to define our skyline today. There are federal regulations that say that you cannot change or obstruct train tracks once they've been put down, but you are allowed to supports for the building straight up and down. That's where the train tracks are running. The designers decided to embrace those curves. If you look up near the top of the building, you'll see a parabolic curve that matches with the arch down here at the bottom, gives the building its unique shape and its nickname, the Hot Pocket Building. If you look down on your left-hand side, you just got a stunning view of the river and the architecture on either side. Sort of looks like the Grand Canyon of architecture down there. You also got a Green Line train passing overhead in front of us. Over on the right-hand side of the river, you'll see a building with a Y-shaped base. It looks like a mechanical pencil or a knife's edge down here at the bottom. This is 150 North Riverside. 150 North Riverside also has Amtrak and Metro trains running down beneath it. That's why it has to cut in over there on the right-hand side of the building. Here, 8th level, 100 feet above us. Because of the unique shape of this building, it's only taking up about 20% of the lot that it's standing on down here at the base. Over on the left-hand side of the river, you will see a tall blue building with those trident support structures down here at the river level. This is the Bank of America Tower. If you are a Bank of America customer, you helped pay for this building. Look at your baby, isn't it cute? The Bank of America Tower is another contextual style building. I think it's having an interesting conversation. This was the site of the GGP building here in Chicago, which was a building that had a facade that only a mother could love. It was largely considered to be an eyesore by Chicagoans, and there was not a lot of heartbreak when it was going to come down. But we like to preserve our history here in the city, and so as you look along the river level, you'll see some sections of metal that have a vertical pattern to them. They have kind of a different shine from the rest of the building. Those are sections of the facade of the former building that stood on this site. Meaning the Bank of America Tower is having a conversation with its neighborhood and with its own past. In just a second here, we're going to enter a part of the river that we call Art Deco Alley because of the excellence of the throne. And then on three sides, we have office towers that make up the armrests in the back of the chair. The man who financed this building's name was Samuel Insull. He had a wife who was an opera singer. And the story goes that way back in the day, they lived in New York City, and she was finding no success in the opera world. So they moved to Chicago, where he built her a... These are Gateway Center 1 and Gateway Center 2. Gateway Centers 1 and 2 went up in the 1960s, and they're in the style of architecture of a man whose name was Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. Mies van der Rohe was a German architect. He was a student and later the director of the Bauhaus in Germany. From the Chicago River and the green tint to the windows matching the water down below, this is a contextual style building. So a few years ago, they put up this mural of the Chicago River, complete with red "You Are Here" marker up there in the middle of the building, in a thinly veiled attempt to get me to talk about the building, and it worked. Coming up on the right-hand side of the river, you will see a giant gray Indiana limestone building proved to be too vertical to be useful to the United States Postal Service forever. They found they were spending too much time moving mail around in elevators. So the USPS sold it, now known as Lincoln Park, which is the neighborhood up on the north side, which at the time was underdeveloped. The fire, frankly, ran out of buildings to burn. When it was all said and done, over 17 city. About 9% of Chicago's surface area is park. He believed that you should keep your waterways open, things like the Chicago River and the Lake Michigan shorefront. He thought that people would want to use. Statue up top was done by John Storrs, and it is of the Roman goddess Ceres, who was the goddess of the harvest. And the first thing they traded on those trading floors were grain futures. It may feel far away here in the big city, but Chicago is only about an hour, maybe 90 minutes tops, from farmland that goes on until you hit tubes. As you look up the side of the building, you'll notice that it cuts out at a couple different locations on its way up to the 110th floor. The Sears Tower is essentially 9 separate towers that have all been smushed together, and each of those 9 sections is one of the bundled tubes. By building it in that style, you can get up to these incredibly impressive. Think of the Sphinx at Giza. It's got that river-facing public plaza down at the bottom of the building that is flanked on either side by those structures. Those are meant to make you think of the paws of the Sphinx. And then the front of the building is where the man's face would be. I think that if you squint a little bit, the reflection of the Opera House in the windows over here sort of looks like the face of the Sphinx, but I have no way to prove whether or not that's up about 20% of the lot that it's standing on down here at the base, which means that you don't have a lot of room at the street level to play with to account for sway. They use a different type of sway. The windows are tinted green, that is to match the river water down below, and then on the other floors, the windows are tinted blue to match the sky above. If you're from Chicago, you will recognize this building from hanging out down here by the river. If you are not from Chicago, you may recognize this building from a little documentary called Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Right, they don't want what's best for you. I can recommend, I honestly think that most places in town that do a Chicago dog do it halfway decently, and I think it's kind of hard to mess up. The owner's office in the Loop, and he looked down at Lake Point Tower, and he said, "There's your prototype." As you're looking at this building, you're seeing a building with 3 points like a triangle connected by curvilinear lines. And if you ever go to Dubai, or if you ever see a picture of the Burj Khalifa, you'll see a building with 3 points like a triangle. This building in Chicago, you are looking at the tallest building on Earth, designed by a woman. Designed by Jeannie Gang. She runs Studio Gang. She's a Chicagoland native. She's currently up in the top spot on that list. Now, she was inspired by aquatic features of